Hello, dear hearts. Welcome to the online global conference, Dreaming the New Earth, co-creating the sovereign, resilient humanity of the future, where we're gathering with visionaries, wisdom keepers, and practitioners from around the world and from a variety of fields of expertise who are in service to the global awakening of consciousness and to supporting people and our planet during these times of great change. During this time together, we will tune into the potent wisdom and experiences they'll be offering, which will serve as guidance for us to ground our personal and our collective vision for the new earth. We will learn about the significance of these times of prophecy we're in, come to feel a deeper sense of community, belonging, and interconnection with all our relations, as well as learn how we can trust our own inner wisdom and gain insight into how to heal that which may be holding us back from walking our true path, individually and as a collective, a path that supports and protects the continuance of life. I'm your host and the creator of this event, Clara Nisidi, and today I'm very excited to present Martin Gluckman. Greetings, Martin, and welcome. It's really good to have you join us here, and thank you so much for the very inspiring work that you do.
Hi, Clara. Well, thank you so much for having me, and it's really lovely to be part of this gathering.
Wonderful. And for those who don't know Martin, I'm going to share his bio. Martin Gluckman is an Indologist based in Auroville, India. He is the founder of the Sanskrit Research Institute, or SRI, and CEDA, the Center for Eco-Village Development and Research. Martin directs a team of international researchers working on deep Indological research with the Sanskrit language. He's a visiting researcher at the University of Cape Town, collaborating on the preservation of endangered First People languages of Southern Africa. And CEDA is working to establish a network of interlinked communities based on the Auroville Blueprint. And it's about Auroville that Martin will be sharing with us in this session, Auroville and the community's solution. So yeah, very excited that you're bringing this piece to the conversation, Martin, with Auroville being such a reference when it comes to community living and that higher unity consciousness that we're aspiring to. So I think you have a wonderful presentation that you're going to be sharing with us about, what Auroville is. And, I think we could start even with some basics of, for those who've never heard of it. So yeah, I would say over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Clara, and greetings to anyone listening to this. So I'm going to share a little bit about my story, about how I came onto this path, which I think is a path that's going to resonate with many of the listeners. And I will prepare this presentation. So this topic is Auroville, but I'll tell you how I came to it. In 1945, my father was in Israel. It was Palestine, British Palestine at the time, and he happened to be in Dagania Aleph, which was the first kibbutz. Kibbutzes were formed in Israel after the Holocaust, and these were the survivors that came together, and they needed a way to create a new society. So they tried this incredible experiment, which we'll talk about a bit later. And I grew up with these stories of a kibbutz in Israel, and it was just a word that stuck in my mind until 1994 when I went. I said I was going for a few weeks, and I ended up spending more than a year learning about this idea of kibbutz. And as a 19, 20-year-old, having grown up in this fascistic apartheid South Africa and seeing this kind of utopic society, mini society in a community, it was very eye-opening. And I remember my diary notes at the time was that the children and the elders were extremely fulfilled and content and happy. And this was something that really resonated deeply with me. So it was my first taste of a community, and it was this continuum of what my father's storytelling as a child had sort of put this word in my ears. And then I went to explore what it was. Now, there were people coming from around the world, from all nations, to explore this idea of kibbutz. Kibbutz is it's a word that kind of means to come together, to a little bit like Ubuntu, or this idea of some yoga in Sanskrit. So it was really ahead of its time. And we'll talk a little bit about it because many years later, I did a study and a collaboration as an academic looking at the kibbutz movement and its impact on the society of Israel. But this is the beginning of my journey. So I was just out of school, done a bit of university, and I went to explore the kibbutz. And actually, kibbutz was a movement that there's around 150,000 people in 270 kibbutzes today. So it actually got duplicated. This is a very important lesson. It wasn't just one kibbutz, but there were hundreds of kibbutzes. And currently 40% of the agriculture of Israel is produced by them. So if we were to look at it in South Africa, where all the farming is kind of private, it's not done by communities. It's an interesting model that could apply to South Africa and other parts of Africa or the world. The kibbutz went through transitions, and this is sort of a topic for another talk just on the kibbutz. So Israel became much more capitalistically orientated, and it dropped the humanistic. I mean, it still kept the humanism, but the socialistic, humanistic ideas were sort of put into the back burner, and it embraced a very sort of strong capitalistic model, more like America. And these ideas of collaboration and sharing, they became less relevant and interesting. So there was a kind of cycle that it went through of transforming the kibbutzes back into sort of private settlements. But there is a kind of a revival today. But the kibbutz is relevant because they managed, you can see this map on the bottom right here, they managed to not create one, but there was hundreds of them. And you had anything from hundreds to thousands of people collaborating, sharing, eating together, collaborative parenting, collaborative schooling. There was a saying in Israel that the kibbutz produced the best people. Whenever there were farms there, they would always say, we don't farm foods, we farm people. And I always found this to be true. I found the people grown up in the kibbutz, they had much deeper sense of value. So this is the beginning of my journey in communities. And in 1999, I went to live in a Yogananda created community. Now, Paramhansa Yogananda, many of you will have read his autobiography of a yogi. And if you turn to the back of that book, you'll see there's a section on what he calls world brotherhood colonies. And what this is showing us is that when humans sit down and start to think deeply about how we should live, these ideas of sharing and collaborating, of humanism, of unity, of coming together, of breaking through borders, they sort of start to come louder and louder. And you'll see many great yogis, not just Yogananda. You're going to see what Sri Aurobindo and the Mother and many great yogis have thought in this direction, and many great philosophers and thinkers all around the world. And we're going to see where this thought has taken birth in India, in a corner of India. So I lived in a Yogananda community, and this was very beautiful. And there are actually quite a few of these around the world. There's in America, there's in Pune, there was in Italy, there still is a lovely community in Assisi. So this was my second taste, and I became deeply interested in this idea of communities. This became a theme as I traveled around the world, and I went to many different communities that had tried to form, and some are still existing today. So this was throughout this 1994 to 2003, I traveled extensively around the world, and one of the themes was exploring community. And interestingly, in 2004, I went to live in a medieval village in Nepal, which is called Bhaktapur. It means a town of devotion, of devotees. Bhakti is devotion. You'll know from the Bhakti movement. And I also observed this place was trapped in time, and I observed the sharing that many families live together. A lot of the values that we've lost in this sort of pursuit of this kind of, I call it aimless and mindless modernity, the values of just sharing, collaborating, eating meals together, these were prevalent, and these had been prevalent there for centuries. So I lived in a medieval community. So this also gave me a very deep insight. And in 2007, after searching for community, I had explored many different communities, the kibbutz, the Yogananda community. I'd considered to go to Tamera in Portugal. I came to a place called Oroville, and I'd only read very little, but I had a very good feeling from the first day of arrival. So this was the first building that I saw. So some interesting things, this building is built completely of the soil of Oroville. These bricks were made by the community of Oroville. So this is an incredible statement and actually won many awards for eco architecture. There's an incredible UNESCO chair of earthen architecture for Asia, directed by a wonderful architect. And he has driven this incredible movement towards ecological building. And this is the visitor center. So, and the second thing I saw was water. And ironically, I'd been working with water and consciousness in South Africa on the Prana Water Project with some friends up in Joburg to try change the water in the high crime and the poorer areas to try and have an influence. It was just a research project. And the second thing I noticed in Oroville after this eco building was the dynamized water. They had put messages of love and mantras and healing and light frequencies. They tried to make the water as conscious and as high vibration as possible. So these are the two things I noticed. And I went, as most people, as I came as a tourist in Oroville, but that very quickly transformed. I think within 3 or 4 days, I was already volunteering. Because the thing with Oroville is everyone is giving their time. Time is the ultimate currency. You could be the wealthiest person in the world. You cannot buy another year of life if it's, if that's that, your life has expired. So time is really the first currency. And in Oroville, you give your time. That's what you give to the project. Time is the real currency of Oroville. So I gave some of my skills and time. Obviously, a skill is the accumulation of time that you've devoted to some activity. If you're a concert pianist, you've spent tens of thousands of hours playing the piano. So I gave the skills that I had to the community, and it encourages giving and it also encourages receiving Oroville because you receive so much from this incredible seed that has been born out of ideas that are not based on selfishness, not based on greed, not based on someone being higher than another person. They're based on the most beautiful vision for the most beautiful society that one can dream up of. So this was my first community. So Oroville is a community of communities, because if you've studied Dunbar's number, you'll know that once you reach more than, say, 150 people, you have to split into little organisms. So Verite was a community. It would fluctuate from anything from, say, 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 in the season. And this was our first home and community. And I volunteered there. I was actually teaching Ayurvedic cooking and Ayurvedic healing. I was consulting there. This was my big study at the time, was Ayurvedic medicine. And they gave us this home on the left in exchange for the work. And I remember it had a compost toilet, and my first job was to clean the compost toilet. So it was very humbling, awakening to welcome to, this is your home now, clean out the compost toilet. And, I did it lovingly. I mean, compost is just compost, it's human compost, whether it's animal or human, it's still animal. And it kind of sets the tone for firstly, humbling yourself, forgetting the I-ness, and thinking about something bigger and collective, and then also radiating that out from Oroville. And you'll see where we go with this. And then my partner and we volunteered in the Solar Kitchen. Now, the Solar Kitchen is the communal kitchen. It's cooking for anything from 1,000 plus. All the schools and elders and the whole community gathers there. And if you can't get there, then the meals are delivered. So this is what was called the Chadar Rochel in the kibbutz, the communal eating hall. But this is a very important part of a community, is eating together. You'll see in the Rishi culture, the Rishis would always share their food, and food was always central to everything. And they would say, there was a great saint called Neem Karoli Baba who would always say, feed everything, feed everything that you see. If everyone feeds everything, then there's very little room for war. There's not much we can fight about if we, all have a lovely meal, especially Indian food. So this was after the cleaning the compost toilet, we had volunteered for cooking, and this was a very beautiful awakening. And this is the center point of Oroville. So there is a place of silence in the middle. It's called the Matri Mandir, the Temple of the Mother, Divine Mother, just like Cape Town is the Mother City. I'm in Cape Town now, and it's the city of the Mother, Mother Consciousness and Mother Energy. And of course, without a mother, there is nothing. There is no creation. So this is the Nabi. In Sanskrit, we say like the umbilical of Oroville. It's the bindu, the center point, and in the center we put silence. It's a very important principle, and there is a park of peace around this with 12 gardens dedicated to different qualities of human consciousness, like gratitude. And this is the place that we have in the center, and around this we built the city. So Oroville is located geographically in Southeast India. It's 12 kilometers north of Pondicherry. Pondicherry was French India. Remember, in the colonial era, India also had different conquests. There was the Islamic conquest, which was for a very long period, more than a millennia. And then there was the British, but not just the British. On the west was the Portuguese. There was a little bit of Denmark. Everyone wanted a piece of India. And remember, don't forget that Cape Town was just a halfway house on the way to the east. And it was just sort of a refueling station until they found gold and diamonds. It wasn't of much interest other than just to refuel your boats and rush over to Asia to get everything that India had, whether it was the silk, the cotton, the indigo, and so forth, ivory, and whatever India's wealth was. India had the most GDP of the world until that was usurped, of course, after the conquering of it, the Islamic conquest, and then the European conquest of India. So this is French India, which gives it a lovely, lovely sort of flavor. There's a little bit of, this French style, but Auroville was based there. And the reason was that the founder, very similar to Nelson Mandela, Sri Aurobindo, was a freedom fighter, and he was considered a terrorist or sort of a wanted person, and he ran away from the British Empire into French Pondicherry. So, and he settled there, and that's where he made his ashram. When he went through his yogic transformation, became a philosopher and a sage, which is also very much what happened to Nelson Mandela. He became a philosopher and a sage. He settled there, and Auroville naturally took place close to where he was. So this is just the historical reason why it's there. It could have been anywhere in India, but it happened to be there. It's in the state of Tamil Nadu, but very much next to Pondicherry. And it was founded in 1968, and currently there's around close to 3,500 people from more than 60 countries coming together. So it's quite a miracle. In my little institute, Cedar and Sri, we've had Ukrainians and Russians working together in the last year. So it really is, I call it the real United Nations, and something that really needs to be radiated out, especially in these recurring wars that we're going through over identity. So it's founded in 1968, and the founders were Sri Aurobindo and the mother. They were creating this idea that all life is yoga. So everything you do is a way to unite yourself with a higher consciousness and a higher being. So why not create a city that is based on this idea that everything you do in the city is there for something higher? If you go to New York or London or San Francisco, Cape Town, it's great. They're all wonderful. You feel good there, but if you're really looking for something deeper in life, and you've sort of woken up to the true heart of this oneness, this idea of oneness that the rishis were teaching, you will feel that's missing. You can have, the greatest view and, the best life there with every kind of sort of pleasure, but you will feel that something is missing. And that something is what we've based Auroville on. So this is the idea of yoga. Yogastha Kuru Karmani, like all your actions should be done in this idea of oneness and unity, and bringing humanity together, and then bringing all people together to build a better world. This is what we need. This is the antidote for war. So there was a dream that Auroville was created from. And this is the synopsis of it. So the mother created this kind of constitution. And when I counsel communities around the world, I always say it's very important to have a constitution, and it very much needs to be written down and clear. And this is something that's really helped Auroville to thrive and prosper into this incredible community. So there should be a place on earth where no nation could claim as its own. So even though it's in India, Auroville is not claimed by any nation. This is what the mother stated. And our fighting instincts will be used to conquer the causes of suffering and miseries. So all this wasteful energy on combat and war and weapons can be directed to making life more beautiful and radiant for everyone. And very important is focusing on children. Children will grow and develop integrally. So nurture the child in this community. And education is not just for tests, but it's really to bring you to a higher level of being, and to enrich you and the whole society. This is a very deep view of education. And you will see, of course, pockets of this around the world. There's great educational institutes around the world that do nurture this idea. most of the great educational institutes are non-commercial, they're non-profit. So this idea is out there, but it's not contained in a city that is dedicated to these ideas necessarily. And beauty is very important. So you'll see as I walk you through pictures of Oroville that art and beauty is a theme, and it flows through Oroville like a river. And money is no longer the sovereign lord. Now, there's always the saying like no money, no honey. Like when I lived in, say, the extreme example, say the US, there, if you don't have healthcare, if you don't have a roof over your head, you're very isolated. There are countries like, say, Denmark or Sweden where you do have more social welfare and social looking after. But there still is this propensity and this push towards money. People forget that money is just a 5,000-year-old idea. It's just we're born into these ideas. Like we might be born into an idea of a religion. That doesn't mean that idea is right. So I always say it's an idea that will come to an end. We don't actually need money. If you just see around you from the Big Bang, there's enough atoms. You know, we need atoms to eat. We need to keep warm. We need some atoms to house ourselves. We might need atoms for devices like we're talking on and so forth. But there's enough for everyone. There's no shortage of atoms. And it just requires that the whole pyramidical structure where you have very powerful corporations that are sometimes more powerful than governments, controlling a lot of reality for us. And we're kind of born into this. We're born into this artificial reality. Money is just a tool for them to exert that power. And yes, it is a useful tool, but it is just an idea that's been there for 5,000 years. So when we created Oroville, we said, let's move away from this moneyness. So there is a parallel economy running on love and running on time that isn't quantified in money. Like right now, I'm working for Oroville. No one is paying me. There's no commercial benefit. It's not a job that you receive a salary for. It is a labor of love. And there is so much coming back from all this love that you radiate out. So this is a very important basis, foundation of Oroville, and you'll see it if you come there. And then work is not just to earn your livelihood, but it's something for a higher expression. So I always tell people the funny stories, like my carpenter was an airline pilot. There are so many people that have come in with one career and then just changed into another career there, because you're no longer forced to just work for money or for status, but it's really to find what you really love doing. I came there and I had this incredible love for languages and cultures and community, and I developed and created my own work. I created an institute 12 odd years ago, working with the ancient language of Sanskrit, which is radiated into the Divehi, the language of the Maldives, and then into the language of the San and the Khoi, these languages of the first people of the world and of South Africa, of Africa. So when you create this field where work is no longer just, oh, I'm going to work to make money, but it's something for my highest expression, it allows people to open up to that. And the most incredible things happen where people just come into Oroville and suddenly they move into another field that they wouldn't have thought of before. And of course, this collaboration and brotherhood. And yes, this does sound like utopia, but we have created this, and this is what I'm going to show you. So it has a charter. Oroville belongs to nobody in particular. Oroville belongs to humanity as a whole, but to live in Oroville, one must be a willing servitor of the divine. So it is a place for divine here. You could take as higher expression for the highest reality for everyone on earth. And it will be a place of unending education, constant progress, a youth that never ages. It's a bridge between the past and future. So it's not just divorcing the ideas of the past, but it's embracing them and bringing them, and then also embracing the ideas of the future. It's very necessary, because often you'll find a community, but they'll be stuck in one or the other, just the past or the future. But we should bridge the two. And it must be a place for research and to embody it in, if you could say it in a phrase, it's human unity. So whenever you look around the world, and I've traveled extensively, and you see there is a conflict, whether it's Kashmir or Israel, it is human disunity. It's people are not embracing the fact that we're human beings. We have the same needs and wishes, and we've created some artificial division through religion, through some idea that we're holding on to that actually is maybe dated. It might be from 1,500 years ago. This idea might no longer be relevant. So it was inaugurated 28th of February 1968. This is its birthday. It's a really good time to visit Oroville, and there is soil from um, more than 150 countries was gathered and put in the center of Oroville. And recently, on the 50th birthday, not so long ago, we took water from hundreds of countries, and we made we did these sort of rituals which also represent this idea of a oneness of a planet. The whole world is a family, basically. So this is the beautiful amphitheater in the center. There was just a concert by Krishna Das there. It seats more than 1,000 people, and this has this temple of human unity where we've taken soil from all these countries. So it's really it's a consecration of this idea of human unity. And it has a beautiful town plan, and it has zones. So it has an industrial zone, a cultural zone, it has an international zone, and a residential zone. My home is in the residential zone. That Peace Park that I showed you with the silent temple is in the Peace Zone in the middle. And then we have all these other zones radiating around. There's a cultural zone which will have the schools. International zone is meant to have pavilions from all the countries of the world. We've already got Tibet, we've got America, France, Canada. Many pavilions have already been established. There's a African pavilion and so forth. So any country that's listening to this can come and create their pavilion of their country. That's the whole idea, is to have a sample of every culture and country there. So we're not denying all the diversity, we're embracing it and saying, come, be unity with diversity. This is the beauty of the future. And so these are the zones, international, cultural, residential, and industrial. Industrial doesn't mean the industry of pollution and of destruction of the environment. It's a industry that's in harmony with the environment. So we have spirulina, incense, aroma distillations. We have factories making tempeh and all sorts of wonderful things. So there are many plans, and many of the plans have already been implemented. There's a lot of infrastructure that has already been established. This is the view that you will see. This is the Matrimandir, and it's a beautiful forest. And I'll show you what it looks like now. This is the drone of the Matrimandir, and this is the center. And you can see there's a sea. So we're very close to the sea. We even have some of our land on the sea, and it's a beautiful Coromandel coast there. And we've got this incredible forest. And if we just quantify it in numbers, so there's around close to 3,500 people from about 60 countries. I think it's a bit more now. It's broken into 130 communities. So it's a community within a community. You could think of a community almost like a farm, but they could be anything. It will be residential, but they're kind of the size of, say, a farm in South Africa. There'll be multiple acres, tens of acres. And each year we get 1,200 plus volunteers just coming to volunteer and give their time. We have 10 schools with 550 students and 800 outreach students. Outreach means we've adopted the village kids from around Oroville and given them free education with the Oroville quality of education to bring the whole bioregion up. The bioregion has the highest standard of living in the whole area. So it's had a huge impact. It's not just about creating a community and radiating it all inwardly, but it's about creating this radiant community and then radiating outwardly, which if you think in the South African context where perhaps at the top the state is doing very little to bring people up in the next generation, we could create hundreds of these around South Africa and radiate this healing and really create a new generation based on the kids of these communities. So this is a lovely idea for someone out there to run with, and some people have already started on a micro level. So we have about 10 square kilometers of land, and we've planted 3 million trees. And it has about 150 commercial units. These are commercial units that are raising funds for Oroville. So they generate some activity that employ the residents and also employ the bioregion community, and they create revenue for Oroville so we can move towards self-sustenance. We have 31 international centers around the world. So these will be in Germany or France, South Africa, centers that represent Oroville around the world. This is very important to make it an international project, not just a national project. And we have 400 acres of farm distributed by 24 farms. And our largest farm is called Annapurna. It's 135 acres that's growing millets, all the indigenous millets that were there for thousands of years of agriculture. We've revived them, and all the indigenous strains of rice, the red rices and so forth. And then we do a massive amount of outreach. This is the charitable work of Oroville. So there's the 800 outreach students, and then we have adopted 80 villages that we help. So these would be, if it was in South Africa, where you have a huge need, or another country like Brazil, where there's a need in the favela, we would adopt communities and radiate out once we have a strong community. And we have educational centers, 36, and 6 health facilities outside of Oroville, and self-help groups. And we treat 6,000 patients a year, and we employ 6,000 people. In Judaism, they say one of the highest things you can do is to give someone a job. So the employment is extremely equitable and very holistic in Oroville. And a lot of the time they upskill people, and then they go out, they'll learn how to make spirulina, and then they'll go and do it themselves, or learn how to make soap. And then, so we're also creating and sometimes funding micro enterprises, and we're encouraging that the creativity is radiating out, because we're not competing. It's not a capitalistic model. It's a everyone comes up together hand-holding model. So UNESCO gave a recognition for Oroville just for its contribution to human unity as an idea. This is just important to see. This was an earlier, this happened quite early. There was a resident of Oroville who was created the bridge between UNESCO. So there was a terraformation, and this is interesting. If you sort of go out into the most arid land in South Africa, well, this is how Oroville looked. If you look here on the top right, this is what the before was, and this is the after. So this is our before, and this is our after. And so we got really, the land was totally denatured. There was a forest there before the colonial period, but it was all chopped for the wood, for French. And this is what we've created. This is a drone footage. So we've created this very dense forest. And there's a huge emphasis on ecological restoration, and water has been a very important one. So obviously, firstly, by stabilizing the soil and the ecosystem, we've created ways for the water to be trapped and captured in the soil. And then we created a whole lot of water technologies. We've done check dams. We've got our own wastewater and water recycling. We've got water dynamization, grey water and black water systems. So we have students coming from around the world to learn about water treatment in Oroville. And we also create our own windmills. We make it completely in Oroville. We have our own metal workshop, and we have these all around Oroville, so pumped on the wind. And we've been making our own roads for a number of years. These are made from the soil. You can see it's the same color as the soil. And they've been tested to be exceeding the quality of the best roads in India. We've done tests recently on them. So they're really high quality roads. And we have our own road service that builds roads. So these are sort of eco roads. We rethought, rather than bring petrochemicals or cement from far away, or petrochemical roads which come from the Middle East, which create wars, this vicious cycle of fundamentalism, supporting fundamentalism and wars, we said, okay, let's create our own roads. And then we've created thousands of paths through the forest, cycle and footpaths. So the forest is a way of moving around also. And as I said before, we have the UNESCO Chair of Earth and Architecture. So here we've been building domes. This one's actually in Coimbatore. So we do an outreach. We help people around India and the world. We've gone also to Egypt and Sudan to learn and also to teach about earth architecture. Many South Africans have come also to learn this. These are some architectural students from India learning how to build a dome with earth. And as I said, there's this incredible emphasis on beauty in the community. So you can see architecturally, there's a lot of really wonderful expression. And we're using wood from the forest. This is earth, local stone. So we're using really what's around us. In my own home, there's a lot of wood from the forest. I just used the local wood after we had a cyclone. A lot of wood gets sort of culled, you could say, and then we use that. We cure it and use it. So you can see here's another example of the architecture, trying to marry the beauty of the forest with the structure, and you'll feel, so it's not this sterile, cold, bringing stones into it. So we try to really have this beautification of the community. This is another example. This is our library. It's made completely of rammed earth. I think it's one of the only few rammed earth libraries in the world. It's a really beautiful library to go sit in. You can feel the thick, cool earth on a summer's day. It cools you down. This is another building, also ecologically built. It was dedicated to a poem, a beautiful poem that was written by the philosopher and yogi Sri Aurobindo, called Savitri. So they try to embody some aspects of poetry. So this idea of beautification is flowing through everything we do. This is our language lab. It's run by a dear friend of mine, Mita, and she got one of the best eco architects to design it. It has a cooling technology, which they took the idea from Iran of these wind tunnels, where you channel the wind and you cool the building. And they don't allow any cell phones or Wi-Fi in this building. So it's a blue zone. So we have these ideas in the community. So if you are radio sensitive, you can go and do your reading there, and you've got a blue zone. Although Oroville is largely a blue zone because of the extensive forest, but this is a particular blue zone building. And then this is our youth housing project, which recently won an award, an eco architecture award. They went to, I think it was Scotland, to receive the award. And it's built with earth. You can see once again the rammed earth has been used. And this is, if you are a youth, I think it's under 40, you can get free house in exchange for some work in the community. So it's youth housing. And this idea of human unity, we have built buildings. So this is called Unity Pavilion. So there's a pavilion dedicated for human unity, and we have this table. There are only a few of these single wooden tables around the world where people come when they have a dispute and they sit and they try to resolve it. I think it's George Nakashima, the architect, who donated this. There's one in Russia and one in New York, and I think there's meant to be one coming to Cape Town and one going to Israel. But these are places where anyone with any dispute can come and sit around this table, and it's a place. So this is a hall of unity in a building called the Unity Pavilion. So, these ideas, this consecration of these ideas of Oroville are very much concretized in the community. It's very important that we keep it, as something that people can experience. So this idea of money, I mean, this is a free restaurant run by Sadhana Forest. We have a free store. This is where if you have too many things, you just take them to the free store. And then if you need something, you go get it. We have a library of things. It's abundance through sharing. So let's say you need a drill, you go there and you don't have to buy a drill. I mean, how many hours in a year do you use your drill? Maybe 3 or 4 or 5 hours, and you don't need to own a drill. So you just go and you have a library of things. So this is volunteers working in exchange for their accommodation and food in Buddha Garden. This is our clothing cooperative. So all of these ideas, and you'll see when I go to, say, Musenberg, I see fragments of them. There's a soup kitchen, but here we have an easel that is asking for these ideas. So we embrace these ideas and we nurture them. So it's very important to sort of create a space where these ideas can thrive. And we do very conscious commerce. So we've got all sorts of things you can think of, clothing, and we manage cotton farms and the dyeing of the cotton. We have a dyeing master. His name is ironically Jesus from Spain. And we do indigo and haritaki dyeing and spirulina and chocolate we've even dyed with. We have a chocolate factory. Chocolate grows, we're in the chocolate belt. It grows in this latitude of 12 degrees north of the equator. We make surfboards. I mean, this is just 1% of the industry, but just to give you a taste of, so this incredible creative commercial projects. And what these do is instead of contribute tax outwards to the government, they pay tax to Oroville, and that tax is what runs the community. And that is the economy of Oroville, basically. So this is a chocolate factory started by Jane, a dear friend of mine from Melbourne. She employs only women. It's one of the most successful chocolates in Asia. They're all over India now. It's called Mason & Co. Very good bean to bar. And then we have very good communication. We've got fiber optic cable running through the community. So it's not just a forest, but it's a forest with fiber. So we've got really good communication networks through the community. I'm hosting a conference on Sanskrit in February. We'll be streaming it around the world. There's no issue with connectivity and so forth. It's been a place for many decades of ecological and green practices. So you can see here, we've got the eco-architecture, check dams, upcycling, recycling, earth building, paper making, permaculture, pretty much everything you can think of, that you would love is happening there. We do this trash and show every year. India's got huge issues with waste. So we do these outreaches where we try to help people and do outreach, make games. This is a game for schools in India. We'll do these photo shoots in the dumps in India and so forth. There's a lot of outreach happening. And then we do have our ecological supermarkets. So this is something that I've seen in Cape Town. We have these kind of shops that are wasteless. So we've got our own produce. This is all coming from our farms every day. And then we've got sort of wasteless where you bring your own containers. So actually, what I observed, you can function without consuming plastic in Oroville. It's one of the few places that's quite easy to just sort of be there. I see a country in Africa like Rwanda, they've banned plastic, single-use plastic, and bringing plastic into the country. It's really good. But in Oroville, so one of the places that's pretty easy to function without plastic if you want to. There's a lot of people doing that. And then obviously we're sharing meals, so there's much less waste. And we have this cooperative supermarket called Portus, where it's not for profit, it's a cooperative. And then safety, we have a kind of community safety that looks after the community. It's done by volunteers and some guards that are from around, and we basically we take care of our own safety. Clothing is a very important one. So we have this conscious cotton. There's been a lot of issues with the pesticides in cotton globally. So we had to find farmers, and we would work with them basically to support them there, support the organic farming. And then we do dyeing. We have natural dyeing in the community. And then we produce the clothing. So we have many different clothing producers inside of Oroville. And then food and farms, as I showed you, we have all these farms, and we have many different kinds of, it's very pluralistic in the types of agriculture. So we have permaculture, and we have fukoka. This is the one straw revolution. We have urban gardens. In the urban spaces, we have farming. Biodynamic, we do hydroponics. These are my neighbors just next to my house doing hydroponic farming. So there's not like one kind of organic farming. It's very experimental. If you come with an idea and you want to try something new, like they're doing the Rishi Krishi, which is the traditional Indian farming using cow dung, you're welcome to do it. So everything is very creative, but a focus on ecological and natural methods. And then the communal eating, this is the solar kitchen. So here it's built on earth blocks. You can see the same Earth Institute has made the bricks. And then we have the huge solar condenser, which has got a helioscope tracking the sun. And here we eat communally every day. You don't have to eat there. If you want to eat at home and cook for yourself, you can. But it's an option to have a buffet, mostly coming from the Oroville farms, largely using the produce that we are growing. I think it's around 60% and upwards that is coming from our local farms, and that's preparing more than 1,000 meals a day. And this is the dome that cooks the food. I mean, it creates the hot water that cooks the food. This is the aerial view of the solar kitchen. You can see the scale of this solar cooker. I think every country should have a solar kitchen. And then we have we have bakeries and many other eating places. Because we have people from 60 countries, we have Korean and Japanese, and every kind of cuisine you can think of is there, macrobiotic and so forth. So there are many different places you can eat communally. There's different schemes. If you work inside of Oroville and you receive what's called a maintenance, which is a kind of to look after you, you can have the in-kind part, and you can choose to eat in any of a number of different eateries in Oroville. We have a beautiful silent restaurant called Goyo, where you can go and eat in silence if you don't want to chat over your meal. And this is our town hall. You can get an idea of the town hall, and it's full of solar panels. And this is the main sort of administration of the community. And we have an energy surplus. So we have 6 wind turbines that provide electricity for Oroville. So we create about 9 gigawatt hours per year. We're only using around 5.5 gigawatt hours per year at the moment. So with that surplus, we generate revenue, and that subsidizes, we get some free electricity for the community, and it also subsidizes some of the commercial activities. So rather than have this energy shortage, which we're experiencing in South Africa, we actually have an energy surplus through generating more electricity than we consume. And we have put the wind turbines in a windy part of India where we get more wind. So, and then we've produced a huge awareness of electrical vehicles. So you can use these little electric cycles. You can rent them when you come to Oroville. We also manufacture little electric vehicles. We've had electric vehicle scooter manufacturing before. It was called the Humvee. And then we have an integral transport where we try to share and have as low footprint as possible of communal transport services. And then the volunteership, the gift economy, this is a huge part of the Oroville economy. So when I did quantify it, I found it was 2.5 times bigger than the conventional economy. Say the conventional economy was X, it would be 2.5x of what we actually receiving in terms of gift of people's time. And this is all the more than 1,000 volunteers that come and join Oroville and give their time. This is really the lifeblood of community, and this is what makes Oroville happen, is the volunteers. And of course, often they receive something, it could be food or accommodation, and they also receive the experience, and they receive the hours that can allow them to join the community, because you have to work your way into the community. That's how you join Oroville, is through giving yourself to the community for a year. And outreach, so all of our commercial units, they do outreach, they help the people living around Oroville. So this is an incredible model to be studied for outreach in countries like South Africa, Brazil, where there is a need, and there's this huge disequity between different parts of the population. And we also do an ecological outreach here. We adopted an estuary, and we created a forest eco park of 58 acres. You can see what it looks like. It's this beautiful, clean estuary in one of the most polluted cities in India, Chennai. And here's the project that we did. And this was a team from the Oroville Pichandikulam, which is basically a biopark inside of Oroville. We went and we adopted this estuary in a city in India. So we do this all the time. And then, of course, the organic farming, we do a lot of outreach, we do training. We tried to save seed. I mean, we have a seed saving bank, one of the seed banks of India. One is in Navdanya, a very famous project up in Dehradun. And then we have one for the South Seed. So we have a seed bank of all the endemic seeds. And we have a beautiful farm called Solitude, which is following Masunobu Fukuoka. He was doing this sort of do nothing farming. It's not really do nothing, but you kind of observe. The idea was that you observe nature and you just work within the rhythms of nature rather than against it. And we have a beautiful farmer called Krishna who is doing farm to table. So you can go to that farm and just eat a meal from the farm, basically. And this is just one example of hundreds of projects. These are our international pavilions that I spoke about. So we've got many different countries. There's Tibet, Africa, South Africa is there, and Canada, and so forth. So we've got all these international pavilions. We have botanical gardens inside of Oroville, a very huge botanical garden, which is also working on ecological education. And then I told you we have 130 communities. I've just focused here on a treehouse community. So it's very pluralistic. Like you can just say, oh, well, I want to do a treehouse community, or you could say, I want to do a musicians community. So this kind of happens if you go in the garden route. You'll see like people might clump together with sort of the same ideas. So here was a group of people that wanted to live in tree houses, and they built the most beautiful tree houses, and they've got a treehouse community. So it's a community within a community. And there's a huge emphasis on arts and theater and music and culture. So there's always productions happening. This was one of the plays with the community. And another one. And this is an exhibition we had of our local Oroville artists. And this is education. So here's our kindergarten. You can see the aerial view. This is where my kids went to kindergarten for around 6-7 years. And it's in the forest, extremely beautiful, little swimming pool, earth architecture once again. And they could just cycle, from a very young age to the kindergarten, or walk if they want. Huge emphasis on education. The whole community, there's a lot of schools, but the whole community is a big school, really. So everywhere you look, there is education and teaching. Whoever knows something is mentoring someone. In my own institute, I've been mentoring people for many years on linguistics and computation, and also on community building. And this is happening organically through organized groups. There's education everywhere. And this is more photos of the diversity of all the different education. So it's really like a haven and a heaven for kids, and for adults, because there's no age limit. You can go and learn up until any age, and particularly for elders in that way. It's one of the most lovely places to for the golden years. And so this is it's like a university. There are many university programs that come, and there's many tertiary workshops that happen for students, and many students come and do internships after their studies in India. This huge emphasis on beautification all through Oroville. Huge emphasis on children, bringing children up and making it a place that children are safe, free, can find all of the activities and teachers that they need. And you can see this is called Play of Painting, where they just go and they do this very free art. And there's Indian traditional dancing and hundreds of activities happening on any given day. And then this is some of our facilities for the elderly. We've got an accessible bus, and this is Arca. It's a place for the elderly to gather and to collaborate. We're constantly hosting festivals, I always say it's like a Grahamstown Festival, but a conscious Grahamstown Festival. This was our Endangered Craft Festival. So we looked at all the crafts that were dying out around India and Asia, and then we brought people, we sponsored them to come and teach that craft so it doesn't die out. This happens every year in Oroville, once a year. We had a Conscious Fashion Festival. This is also happening regularly, where we will do conscious fashion, conscious clothing, the way we do the modeling, everything, the way it's made, the way it's sold is all more consciously. And then health. There's hundreds of healers living in Oroville, and it's a place where also we get free healthcare. If we need treatments, it's available to us pro bono as members of the community. So this is a very wonderful place to experience holism and the holistic sort of ideas of healing. And we have every kind of modality you can think of, every kind of massage, and every kind of, from energy to very physical body work and beyond, basically. And this is a little map that one of our team in CEDA did. It's called Anatomy of an Eco Village. So it was just to kind of give you a meditation, a kind of a yantra to look at what is there in a community. So we kind of try to give people a cross-section of all the diversity that's happening in a community. And a number of years ago, I created CEDA in the Cedarburg. I was reflecting on these beautiful, fragrant trees, this cypress tree, which is called the cedar tree in the Cedarburg. And then I was seeing that these trees are sacred all around the world, in Lebanon, in the Himalayas, the Devadaru it's called, and in South Africa also for the traditional first people, they were sacred trees. And trees are a community, so I kind of use it as a name for the Center for Eco-Village Development Research. And what we've been doing is we did a comparative research of communities around the world looking for a blueprint that was watertight. So this is where I was in touch with the Kibbutz Institute in Haifa, and I was in touch with Michaeli, some of their scholars, just looking at the kibbutz and what its output was, why they were sort of transformed into less collaborative projects, what happened in Israel, the macro environment, and also how to protect this kind of idea. And then we studied Yogananda's model, and we studied Findhorn, and we also studied the model of the first people of South Africa, the San and the Khoi people. And we, of course, studied the model of Oroville very deeply. And we did this comparative over a long period, looking at the different systems, how many communities there are, the identity, the vision, economics, commerce, farming, ecology, the legal framework. And we created a blueprint. This is a blueprint that I created based on the Oroville idea. The Oroville idea actually seems to work very well. We have almost 60 years now, and it is a thriving, growing community, radiating so much love and so much healing. And this is the ideas that we were sort of taking the best ideas from different traditional and modern communities. And the idea was to radiate this out around the world. So I'm mentoring a number of communities to go through the different phases, the pioneer, the growing up phase, and the mature phase. Oroville is in the mature phase, where it's already established its roots and you have a strong community. So this is what CEDA is doing. This is our outreach. And this is bringing us to the end of the presentation on Oroville. And thank you. I hope that it was interesting. And you can ask any questions that might have come up.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much for that.
That's the presentation, and that's Oroville in a nutshell.
Yeah, I see in a nutshell, because it's a huge project and very complex with many different layers to it. And yeah, I felt it was really valuable for you to come and share this here in this gathering in particular, because we're seeing a real desire awakened in people to return to community living, and there are so many intentional communities that have popped up around the world, and in the last few decades, seeking that more empowered, more self-sustainable life that we dream of. And at the same time, I see those people with that desire a little bit wary of taking the leap into community, because there's so many that don't work. And yeah, I'd love to hear your perspective on that, and perhaps you've expressed it through the presentation, but maybe in a nutshell, if you could share what makes Auroville work. And you mentioned,
So
go ahead.
yeah, absolutely. No, that's actually the second. So we just spoke for about an hour. The second part is really to show the model, the blueprint. I just basically walked you through what Auroville is here. And then the second part of the presentation, which is usually another hour, is how did Auroville do this and how do we duplicate this? And this is very important because you're absolutely right. Most communities fail. It's way more than 80%. And I visited many communities in South Africa that failed, and they fail for all the reasons why Auroville succeeded. Auroville did the exact opposite of what the failed ones did. So the very first thing is to establish a vision. You have to have a vision. So the easiest way to fail a community is to not have a vision, because you're going to have people coming with all different visions, and you're going to have no congruency between the people. And then you're going to have a lot of conflict. You see, we have conflict in Auroville, but not about the vision. People might have conflict on like a dog that's barking as their neighbor, the usual conflict that you will find. Someone might think that dog barking is not a problem. Some might think it's fine. So the normal interpersonal, but these are very minor compared to people fighting about, should we celebrate human unity, or should we have a community of people that only want humans following my idea? So this is the beauty of Auroville, is the vision is actually very translatable to other communities. And I always encourage people to model on the Auroville vision, because it is so, the mother was Jewish. She was a French Algerian Jew. Sri Aurobindo was a Western educated Hindu who was a freedom fighter, called a terrorist, and then became a yogi. So this incredible marriage of these two minds and their ideas coming together to create this place in the tail of World War II, in the tail of the Holocaust, saying, hey, we've got to create a better world. They lived through World War II. They watched its horrors. They watched that the world almost didn't survive. So very important to have a vision. And the second most important is to have guidelines. And the third one is to have a clear structure, legal structure. And in Auroville, in the case, you don't have individual ownership. I can walk you through a little bit of the second presentation, if you want, which will touch upon these in more detail, or we could leave it to another session, maybe in another talk, because we probably need another hour to go through the blueprint of Auroville, what Auroville actually did right. But in a nutshell, we had the vision, we have very clear guidelines. So guidelines like non-violence, like we don't tolerate violence. So if someone comes with violence, it's not that we will throw them out immediately, but it's not part of the guidelines. And we will obviously see if there's a good reason. If there's not a good reason, eventually, if it's not in harmony, then you will be asked to leave the community if there is repeatedly violation. Because when you join the community, you agree to be in accordance with the vision, and you agree to keep to the guidelines. The mother also said, as a kind of small print, she said the first rule is there are no rules. She didn't want to make it a dogmatic place of hundreds of rules, but we have guidelines. Auroville is basically having sort of guidelines of what is okay and what is not okay. So in a nutshell, the vision and the guidelines are very, very, very crucial. And the communities that failed, I don't know if you've worked with any communities, but you will see that generally the ones that have failed, they have not had a clear vision. I worked recently with a community that was actually not far from where you are in Plet, and it went through incredible tribulation. I won't say it's failed, but it's sort of you know, it's sort of in its last breaths, and it's not functioning as a community right now. And the one thing is that they had shareholding and ownership, which is another thing that Oroville doesn't have. I'm not a shareholder of Oroville. I'm not an owner of Oroville. I'm just a resident there, and my home, I'm just a steward of the home. I'm just looking after that home. So it's very important to kind of look at models that have worked, and Oroville is the best model that we have on Earth at the moment. There is no better model, basically. And then to model on them, I think I'm just trying to look for the part 2, and then I will just show you something from there where I'm going to walk you through. So there is a part 2, but I'll just do it as a sort of a. I'm going to share this screen.
As a nutshell share, yeah, because I think it would be amazing to have a follow-up
Yeah,
to
it's going to.
the full presentation.
I'll give you a taste.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll just give you a taste of just because your question is a very important question, because it creates apprehension. I mean, obviously, I joined Oroville when it was already a successful community. So people in South Africa haven't experienced a successful community. In Israel, obviously, they would have. The kibbutzes were duplicated, so they have already a blueprint. So if you look in the model, firstly, you have a name and a symbol in Oroville. So we have a very clear name, and there is a clear identity. This is called Oroville. It's not just a vague gathering of people. And we had a vision. This is our vision: human unity, conscious life. All life is yoga. It doesn't belong to anyone. Children should develop integrally. Education for enrichment, celebration of beauty. Money is not the sovereign lord. Work for higher expression, collaboration and brotherhood, bridge between the past and future, and spiritual and material research. I can't find many humans that are free thinking that would disagree with any of these points. There's nothing dogmatic there. There's nothing saying stand on one leg and stare into the sun. There's nothing to say that you have to only eat this or only eat that. And if you look at our guidelines, first guideline, you should be in concordance with the vision, basically. You don't want people coming into the community living there. I mean, they can visit, that are not in accordance, because if they're, say, wanting to follow another vision that is totally opposite your vision, you're going to not be able to form a community. And this is exactly why communities fail. The other guideline, and this is a funny one, was no rules. So we don't really have rules. There's not a rule on authoritarianship. We don't have religions. You can, obviously, I'm born Jewish, and we have Shabbats, and we have Al Pesach, and you have Christmas activities. We have Christmas dinners and evenings, but religion is not sort of preached there. It's not a place of religion. It's a place of something beyond religion. And this universal, if you want to bring a universal idea of spirituality, that would be the better way. And everyone should be contributing. We don't discriminate. There's no politics, no drugs. This is a big one. Unfortunately, in South Africa, people, like I've been to this gathering, I won't say the names of the gatherings, where kids will be around and they'll be, okay, drug is a loaded word because it could be an entheogenic ceremony, but this is also something that, Oroville, we don't allow drugs, basically. It's just no drugs. No physical violence, no ownership of immovable assets. This is one that I've seen many communities fail because they're not a community. If one person owns more than the other, it's not a community. It's just a sort of co-housing where one person owns more than the other. All of the major assets should be belonging to the vision. The vision should own them. And then we have respect for, this is in our guidance, for all cultures and nations. Alcohol is not encouraged. We try to resolve our conflicts internally, and you should abide by the laws of the country. This is an important one. So we don't, we are law abiding, basically. It's not like we're just there to kind of break every law and hide in the forest. So the guidelines are very important. And then obviously the legal structure. This I will go into in a second one, but many people don't, they get this too vague. So this is to answer your question, they don't have a vision or a clear enough vision, or they don't have everyone on the same vision. They don't have guidelines, and they have ownership. Those are the three sort of things that I've seen. If I see a community forming without a vision, without clear guidelines, and without with ownership, I will predict it's not going to last more than a few years. It's not a community then, it's some other idea.
Right. And this blueprint that is Oroville, and this idea of replicating it internationally around the world, where is that at? How is it? Is
Yeah.
it?
So it's been a research project for many years where we were creating the blueprint and studying the different systems, because Oroville is very layered and complex, and it's also experimented with different systems. It's evolved different ideas, and then it's constrained by India's legal framework, because there's certain things that will be easier in other countries that are more difficult, and are easier in India that are more difficult in other countries. Every country has a different regulatory framework. Just to give an example of that, you can't just create an Oroville in South Africa, because the zoning, the municipal zoning, no municipality in South Africa would allow you to just build 10 schools and build a communal eating hall, and then could build residential zones all over. They would say, hey, is this a farm? Is this is this a private nature reserve? And that you're very constrained. You can only have 5 or 7 dwellings and laborers' cottages, and then the laborers' cottages are for laborers. They're not just for residents. So the zoning of most countries, most Western countries, you're not going to be able to just build an eco-village. What some countries have been pushing for in Germany and Canada is an eco-village zone. So I think it was Leindhoek have been trying to kind of do a hybrid. So you can't just build an Oroville in South Africa. You can buy a few farms and glue them together in a trust, but you still have to deal with the Agri 2 zoning or the Agri 1 zoning and put everything through town planning. We don't have any town planning authority in the municipality. We go through our own planning, which is the community planning, and we say we want to build a school, we build the school. It goes through our own community participation. So we have complete autonomy to build what we want on this 10 square kilometers. Now, this is people think that that's a small thing, but it's huge, because many communities have hit that wall. It's a very solid wall you're going to hit in South Africa. Let's say you and I have a few thousand people and we say, okay, we're going to build a community. We can't just buy a few farms and build an Oroville. We have to wait up to a year to put through plans. We have to rezone. The zoning doesn't actually fit into a community model. So then we have to spend maybe 10 years talking to a very cooperative municipality and say, look, we want a community model. And we're not, it's the psychology of South Africa in the town planning, they don't have this in their thought process. So the groundwork is really for people to join in different countries and start to get the seed planted globally. So we have an eco-village. Israel will definitely have it, because they have kibbutzes, and a kibbutz is an Oroville, basically. So they will have a kibbutz zone. And so we should study these models, study the pioneers, study the Oroville model, and translate it into South Africa. In terms of the blueprint, so we have documented, and we're about to launch a website. We have a beautiful volunteer from Italy working on the website, which will be basically a whole lot of open source information. And then we have a mentorship where we have a team in Oroville that mentors people to create communities like Oroville.
Okay, amazing. Just as we come to the end of this this session together, you mentioned the Park of Unity has 12 gardens surrounding it, and they all represent 12 principles for humanity. Could you share what those principles are?
Yeah, sure. So it's the 12 qualities of the mother. So if you it's sincerity, humility, gratitude, perseverance, aspiration, receptivity, progress, courage, kindness, generosity, equality, and peace. And each of these has a different colored meditation room around the silent room, which is also for silence. And you can sit inside of these if you want to just focus on, say, humility or aspiration or receptivity. These are just 12 beautiful qualities that were taken as a kind of idea. We could find more qualities, but these are the 12 qualities that were chosen for the 12 gardens.
Beautiful. Thank you. So many more questions, so many more curiosities, but we've come to the end of our time here. And before we go, I just, I'm asking all of the speakers to share what your personal vision or your personal prayer is for the new earth. And I'd love to know yours.
Well, firstly, thank you, Clara, for hosting this beautiful gathering and Vision for the New Earth. So we kind of born inheriting a lot of ideas and we just accept them. Like I said, money is just a 5,000-year-old idea. And New Earth is going to be creating a humanity that is looking after everyone. It's going to be a global family. We're going to be unified and working exactly as Orville is working to conquer the causes of suffering and misery collectively. There is no need for war. There's no need for weapons. There's no need for fighting. These are old ideas. They're almost like we've got these vestiges from the past that are kind of stuck in the present. There's absolutely no need. There is enough for everyone. We're in an age where we have the most wonderful possibilities to basically create any future that we want. And Orville is a little microcosm, and my dream is that we have many more Orvilles radiating around the world like seeds scattering in the wind and planting in every single nation on earth, and link these all together, and then let that create a web that radiates around the planet and creates a whole new consciousness, which I know all these individuals are working for, but we all need a harbor. There's storms out there, the storms of war, the storms of suffering, the storms of disparity. So we all need harbors. Orville is the greatest harbor that Earth has produced in the last millennia. There is nothing like it on Earth. I encourage everyone listening to come to Orville, spend time there, at least a month, I say. It's not a place to visit for 1 or 2 days. It's not a tourist place. If you have a skill or an ability, which everyone has, everyone's been doing something that they love doing, come and offer it to the community. Contact my team. We're here for you. We will support you as members of our family. And let's take this idea and bring it out around the world and create a network of interlinked Orvilles or Orville-inspired communities. And in one more generation, let's have our kids and grandkids be in these beautiful communities and let this idea radiate a golden period of peace and collaboration globally.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. When's the best time to come visit? That's another question I've got.
Anytime is good. Tomorrow, basically.
Great. Well, thank you so much again, Martin. It's been a pleasure and an honor to have you join us here. And yeah, to all those who have tuned in, hope this has been valuable. Thank you so much for your presence and have a beautiful day.
Thank you, Clara. Namaste.
Namaste.